MAGA policies do not work. And Scott Bessent is a great example of this, because time and time again they show us they have no plan. And when Scott Bessent gets asked about the economy they've destroyed, he says the best way to get your interest rate down in this country is to move from a blue state to a red state. Let's take a look at this clip.
Kristen, I can tell you that the Council on Economic Advisors has a study. You know the best way to bring your inflation rate down? Move from a blue state to a red state. Blue state inflation is 0.5% higher, and that is because they don't deregulate, they keep prices up, energy is higher.
Just according to the consumer prices, inflation was at 2.3% back in April. In September, 3%. But let me ask you about tariffs, because there's this big announcement on tariffs.
I want to remind you that Scott Bessent's net worth is north of $500 million. And his solution to the failing economy by President Trump and everybody that works for him, because Scott Bessent is the Treasury Secretary, instead of having a plan to fix our economy and bring down inflation, he tells the average American, in an economy where it's hard to get a job or wages that pay correctly, just go ahead and move. Sell your house while we're in this terrible housing market, and move to a state where there's little economic opportunity while we are in the middle of a job crisis. By the way, that's not going to fix anybody's inflation rate. It is actually mind-boggling that these people have the positions they have. However, none of them seem to know what they're talking about. I would wager money that the average college student could out-debate these people in their own professional field of work. And this is embarrassing to who they represent. Because as a leader, the people that work for you are a representation of you. And if they're failing, you're failing. But Trump has hired yes men all around him to tell him he's always doing a great job. And as Trump sees his billions go up and Scott Bessent sees his $500 million net worth go up, they don't care about the average American. They don't care about MAGA. They only care about power, control, and getting richer. And they will lie to the country. They will continue to try to divide and separate. The only problem for them is normal Americans refuse to divide and separate. And the only people they've managed to divide and separate is MAGA, as we see with them imploding from the inside, and Marjorie Taylor Greene turning on them, Tucker Carlson turning on them, Nick Fuentes turning on them. Hell, they're turning on themselves with their political violence against their own party. And every time we see somebody like Scott Bessent, who was supposed to be speaking for Trump, they embarrass him yet again and show that they have no plan and they've never had a plan. But we're mistaken. They do have a plan. It's to enrich themselves and their friends. And also, moving does not lower inflation rates, because if he's demanding that people mass move from blue states that tend to have more economic opportunity, blue states as a whole contribute to 70% of America's GDP, and that's for good reason. There's also a reason why blue states tend to be more expensive than red states. It's because everybody wants to live there. However, because everybody also moves over there, the prices of everything goes up. So guess what, Scott Bessent? If he's demanding that people just mass migrate to a red state where they're going to pay you less for the same work, eventually the prices there are going to go up because people are also mass moving there, and nothing happens to the inflation rate. Prices just get driven up everywhere because the economy hasn't been fixed. He's trying to put a band-aid solution on a gaping wound, and any professional whose opinion is worth considering would not sit here and say something foolish like that. Lucky for us, a handful of MAGA is going to listen to Scott Bessent ruin their lives further anyway, and they'll move out of diverse blue states that are against racism, which benefits society. I want to remind you, this is the same guy saying beef prices are up because illegal immigrants are smuggling diseased cows into America. You can't make this stuff up. All of their problems always have to be blamed on somebody else, because all they know how to do is avoid accountability, divide, and deflect, and give the MAGA crowd something else to fear and focus all of their hate on. And by painting people such as illegal immigrants as these devils, they can then justify their poor treatment of those individuals, as we see with ICE being given federal immunity by Stephen Miller, while they wear no body cam and assault actual Americans and discriminate against brown Americans. Now let's see what Scott Bessent had to say about Trump's rise in beef, as Trump gave Argentina $40 billion so we can go buy beef from them instead of giving it to our farmers as well. Let's take a look at this clip.
Expecting $10 meat.
Well, Maria, the beef market is a very specialized market. It goes in long cycles, and this is the perfect storm. Again, something we inherited, and there's also, because of the mass immigration, a disease that we've been rid of in North America, made its way up through South America. As these migrants, they brought some of their cattle with them. So part of the problem is we've had to shut the border to Mexican beef because of this disease called the screwworm. So we're not going to let that get into our supply chain. And again, I don't want to focus on one product. It's a very important product, and we are laser focused on this issue.
Do you know what's so crazy about all of this? First off, he apparently thinks Hispanic people are training cows to hop the border and come into America, while the cows have disease and nobody notices. But they also blamed our job crisis on illegal immigrants. However, as they're deporting illegal immigrants, our job situation is actually getting worse. In newsflash, Americans don't want to work on farms. They don't want to do construction work for the amount of money they would get paid for. When does any of America's problems fall on Trump? Everything bad is a previous president's fault. Everything good a previous president did is Trump's fault. How long did they think that was going to work? This is why you have millions of Americans screaming to impeach Trump. This is why you have MAGA screaming to impeach Trump. This is why people are leaving MAGA. He's done nothing for them. He lied to them, filled their hearts with hate, and then abandoned them the same way he did it to Marjorie Taylor Greene. And if there are any MAGA out there that say it would never be me, it's already you. Donald Trump has abandoned MAGA. Lucky for us, every time somebody like Scott Bessent opens their mouth, they do more harm than good for themselves. And Scott Bessent seems to be obsessed with immigrants because he's been telling Americans along with Trump to just be patient. But Trump, Americans have been patient. It's been 10 months now. Nothing good has happened. Lives have been destroyed. These people don't have time. People are piling up debt and maxing out credit cards, Googling how do I pay my mortgage this month, stressed out about whether or not they're going to keep their job, and looking for a plan B if something did happen to their job. They can't even DoorDash because everybody's doing it. Scott Bessent's solution? Blame the immigrants. Hold on, wait a minute. Immigration's the problem. Illegal immigration's the problem. However, Trump wants to bring in millions of H-1Bs to do engineering and high-paying American jobs that he promised MAGA they were going to get. Why? Because he can pay them a lot less for the same work. And Trump works off of bribery and blackmail. These people are indebted to him because at any time if these business owners don't want the H-1Bs here anymore, they can just get rid of them. The billionaires win in this case. Americans lose every time. But let's see what Scott Bessent had to say about immigrants raising the prices of everything as they fly them into the country to pay them less than they would pay an American. Let's take a look at this clip.
On the discussion of affordability, you just heard Vice President J.D. Vance ask people to have, quote, a little bit of patience with the administration. Let me ask you, Mr. Secretary, how long do Americans need to be patient? How long do they have to wait for the cost of living to come down?
Well, Kristen, in March of 2024, I wrote a piece and I talked about the 3 I's that were killing Americans: immigration, interest rates, and inflation. President's closed the border and the mass immigration is gone. And that was putting, a lot of the immigration was putting upward pressure on housing, downward pressure on wages. Interest rates are down, and now we are starting to see the affordability. The prices get better. We had a very big October for home sales. Energy prices, gasoline is down. We saw, we believe healthcare is going to come down. We will see an announcement this coming week on that. And so across the board, prices are starting to come down. We're having Thanksgiving week. This will be the lowest cost for a Thanksgiving dinner in 4 years. Turkey prices are down 16%.
He doesn't seem like he believes his own words coming out of his mouth. He knows prices are high. Thanksgiving is more expensive than ever. He's actually referring to the meal that Walmart's offering that carries 33% less food than you would have gotten last year for 25% less of a price. Meaning you are actually paying 8% more for less food. And they took out the high quality foods and they replaced them with generic named canned vegetables. And to give you a better look at that, here's the changes right here. This is what you get last year. This is what you get this year for 8% more. Because 25% less in price doesn't mean anything if you're getting over 33% less food. You're still paying more. It's another lie. It's another gaslight. Mind you, he's supposed to be talking about the economy and how they're fixing it. And he's talking about lower turkey prices. When we see right here in 2025, the turkey's going for 97 cents a pound, and 2024 was going for 88 cents a pound. These people don't even know how to lie correctly, and it just makes them look so much worse than we already know them to be. This is why MAGA is self-destructing. But how can we expect Scott Bessent, somebody whose net worth is $500 million, to be able to relate to the average American, whom he told to quit your job and just move states to lower inflation, which wouldn't even work? It would just raise the prices of everything to that new area and give you less economic opportunity. And now you have to struggle to find a job paying you less for your current bills. These people are so out of touch, it is alarming. The Epstein files were bad enough. Calling for executions of veterans and death penalties was bad enough. They're coming up on a year in office and are still lying about how terrible of a job they're doing. Most people are thoroughly convinced that these people spend the majority of their time figuring out a new lie, a new gimmick, a new distraction, and spending the 1 hour a day they do work on how to enrich themselves. What's funny as well is housing prices are up because of billionaire companies like BlackRock as well. But you don't hear him talking about that now, do you? No, it's the poor illegal immigrants working on farms for $7 an hour. Scott Bessent says so many unintelligent things, you could convince me he's actually actively working against Trump as a double agent. That is the level of malarkey that comes out of Scott Bessent's mouth and how terrible of a job he's doing. Matter of fact, Trump threatened to fire him a few days ago publicly. And here's what Trump had to say about firing Scott Bessent publicly on stage and embarrassing him. Let's take a look at this clip.
Rates are down despite the Fed. I mean, Scott, you got to work on this guy. He's got some real mental problems. No, there's something wrong with him. It's just sweet. I'll be honest, I'd love to fire his ass. He should be fired. Guy's grossly incompetent. And he should be sued for spending $4 billion to build a little building. I'm building a ballroom that's going to cost a tiny fraction of that, and it's bigger than the whole thing put together. You got to work on him, Scott. The only thing Scott's blowing it on is the Fed. Because the Fed, the rates are too high, Scott. And if you don't get it fixed fast, I'm going to fire your ass, okay? I can't tell you, Scott, sir, don't fire him. Sir, please don't fire him. He's got 3 months to go. Don't fire him. I want to get him out, Scott. Please. He's the voice of reason. You're very lucky you have him, I'll tell you that.
Number one, Trump has no power to be able to fire somebody that's part of the Federal Reserve. But remember, he uses bribes, blackmails, and threats to get his way, even when they're empty. However, the same way he threatened to fire Marjorie Taylor Greene in a Twitter post months ago, and now she's actually gone and he's calling her Marjorie Trader Brown, Trump is apparently seeing what everybody else is saying, which is that Scott Bessent is unqualified and an embarrassment to this country. And America's question to Scott Bessent is, how do you do such a terrible job that the person you're doing the dirty work for is threatening to fire you over the dirty work? And we're so tired of the empty promises from this administration. Where's that $2,000 Trump promised every American? What happened to the $5,000 he was going to give everybody when he put Doge in office and he fired over 300,000 government workers? Which I know some people who were fired from the government and they're still struggling to this day. I mean, they ruin lives and Trump sticks to nothing he promises people. And now Scott Bessent is saying for every American that has a kid, they're going to give $1,000 to invest into that child's bank account. You already owe America $7,000 a person, as they just gave $1 trillion in tax cuts to billionaires. You can't make this stuff up and refuse to pay SNAP recipients after the courts ordered them to pay SNAP recipients, and just defunded the Affordable Care Act for low-income Americans who need help paying their medical bills. He also promised them money for that as well, which is just nowhere because MAGA has no plan and MAGA policies do not work. They hurt, they destroy, and they divide. That's why we see MAGA hurt and destroyed and dividing, because believe it or not, Trump's policies are hitting them a lot harder than a lot of them would lead on. But as we know, only PDF defenders, and Nazis remain in MAGA at this point in time. However, let's see what Scott Bessent had to say about this promise of money for newborn American babies, which nobody can afford right now, and with the average age of a homeowner's first home being 40. Let's take a look at this video.
One of the things that's going to happen next year is the Trump accounts. Every child who was born from January 1st for the next 3 years is going to get a government account that goes into the stock market. So every American child born for the next 3 years, starting January 1st, is going to have that. They can take it out when they're 18. They're going to learn the power of compounding, and there's going to be a lot of financial literacy around that. And I think the reason that we saw kind of the disastrous election in New York is young people don't feel like they have a stake in the economy, so we want to give them a stake in the economy. One of the things that's going to happen next year, we want to give them a...
Why haven't we found one of those diseased cows that illegal immigrants are bringing in, Scott Bessent? More importantly, to raise a child from the age of 1 to 18 in these times averages out to about $400,000 by the time they reach 18. $1,000 at an average rate of a 5% return in the market, if that was to even be the return rate for whatever government account Trump's going to put $1,000 in the account for, after 18 years comes out to $10,800, meaning people would still be down $390,000 $100,000 and potentially homeless in an already destroyed economy with probably some mental health issues and a poor upbringing for the child. Everything is a scam with these people. They expect already busy Americans who don't have much time for anything else to just believe what they have to say at face value. And with all the stress going on, these people don't have the energy to fact check every single lie they have to spew. So their main audience is desperate people. And it's why Trump loves the uneducated, because to him, they're easier to manipulate. And that's why we are here to re-educate. Donald Trump and Scott Bessent are an embarrassment to America. Mike Johnson, all of them. As a matter of fact, where are the Epstein files? It wouldn't surprise me if they're holding out to hopefully distract everybody so that not much attention is on it when they do come out. However, it's not going to work. We will post wanted signs all over America and remind people about what went on in those Epstein files, because we refuse to sit down and allow this country to be further destroyed by the incapable. We will not be deceived. We will not be worn down. They lie, we expose. They gaslight, we reveal the truth. They spread misinformation, we re-inform. That is how we get our communities back. And it's crazy how all of our lives have turned into a bug's life. And they're about to find out how a bug's life ended. And finally, a reporter grills Scott Bessent on the increase in grocery prices and their undoing of Trump's tariffs, asking him, are you admitting that Trump's tariffs were a failure? Scott Bessent then goes into psychosis and starts rambling on about how much she weighs. Let's take a look at this clip.
Well, and banana prices are up almost 7%. Coffee prices up nearly 19%. Isn't the fact that you're rolling back tariffs an admission that ultimately they do drive up prices for consumers?
Kristen, how much does your arm weigh?
That I do not know.
Exactly, but you know how much you weigh. You get on the scale every morning. Inflation is a composite number, and we look at everything. So we try to push down the things we can control. And as I said, that we are working on the energy prices are down, and everything flows from that. And I think we're going to see these other prices come down. And again, many of these goods were part of trade deals with countries that have been in the works for months.
Sure, very quickly, come down in a matter of weeks, months?
Sorry?
Weeks or months? You said the prices will come down in weeks or months?
Some are going to come down in weeks, some are going to come down in months. We just had in terms of affordability, we just had the best month in the housing market due to affordability, due to increased supply in October, best October in 3 years, best month since February.
Let me ask you.
Energy prices are not coming down because gas is the exact same as last year. So if the price of gas and energy is going up, that means prices are not coming down, Scott Bessent. Scott Bessent says we have areas of the U.S. that are currently in a recession. And he gets asked if he thinks the entire country is at risk of this recession, to which he says no. And he might be right as long as Trump gets impeached before then. Let's take a look at this clip.
Let me ask you big picture, Mr. Secretary. You said earlier this month, I'm going to quote you, quote, I think there are sectors of the economy that are in a recession. Kevin Hassett, director of the National Economic Council, said, quote, we're starting to see pockets of the economy that look like they might be in a recession. Which parts of the economy do you believe have dipped into a recession?
Well, clearly housing has been struggling, and so interest rate sensitive sectors have been in a recession. And the other thing that was not helpful, Kristen, was the longest government shutdown in history. It was 1.5% hit to GDP. The 9,500 flights canceled, and the Democrats didn't care that they hurt the American economy. Anything to stop Donald Trump.
Well, big picture, is the country at risk, the entire country at risk of being in a recession?
No, I am very confident about 2026, because what we are going to see is the president has done peace deals, tax deals, and trade deals, the one big beautiful bill.
Overall, it doesn't seem like anything can get these people to stop lying, because the one big beautiful bill actually adds trillions of dollars to our debt, gives billionaires tax cuts, cuts Medicare. But all of that aside, people are waking up, and the rest of MAGA with any form of self-respect is leaving that abusive relationship, because with no jobs and houses nobody can afford, what else is supposed to happen to the economy besides it coming to a crash? But as we saw about 2 weeks ago, everybody's tired of it, with Mom Donnie winning New York City and other states going blue as well. 76% of Americans agree that our economy's been destroyed by Donald Trump, and America's ready for a real leader that actually cares about the American people. Because where America is right now is not reflective of what the people want. It is reflective of the incapable. And lucky for us, these people lie so much that they're starting to expose themselves. Because with these mass protests demanding for the impeachment of Donald Trump, and with congressmen and senators coming together, saying they're ready to invoke the articles of impeachment on Donald Trump, this is all coming to an end. And if Trump is so mad at the people that work for him, he's threatening to fire them publicly, then maybe he should only be mad at himself, because these people are a reflection of him. And if they're a reflection of him, then that means that Donald Trump is an embarrassment. With that being said, release the unredacted Epstein files, Donald Trump. Thank you very much for watching this video. Please make sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.